Hello and welcome back to the final blame game of the regular season. It was a doozy of a super week. Teams traded spots last minute. There was a series of tiebreakers, and given that it was a 17-game weekend where a lot of teams were knocked out, I don't want to slam a bunch of teams that are done for now. I actually want to use this blame game to look forward, not for the playoffs, but for the award voting. Before we dive into it, make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done all that already. I also normally record these live on my Twitch, but I didn't do that this week because I needed a recovery day, even though I still had Hotline League at night. Some people were out of the LCS this week, so I ended up having to work Wednesday through Sunday on top of my usual workload of the blame game, Hotline League, the dive, streaming, Genshin content that we've started putting more stuff on our YouTube channel. Anyways, the point is, I'll be streaming the blame game again next week after I finally have a full day off this Friday. This week's topic is the MVP race, specifically through the lens of Summit. It felt like he was a shoo-in to win the MVP after gapping Whippo a couple of weeks ago, but then C9 unexpectedly lost a game to TSM where he played pretty poorly, and then C9 dropped 2 more games this super weekend against Malphite counterpicks that slammed Summit, so the community thinks. And it seemed to counter Cloud9 as a whole. Let's just clear up the obvious one first. Summit got slapped around by Someday. In this matchup, he's trying so hard to be aggressive, sometimes even going melee range against Someday for trades. Normally, Graves will just get Q spammed down, but Summit also allows W and E's from Malphite to connect. In the replay, we see the chunk that Summit takes before the all-in from Someday. He has flash up and can maybe win this if he outplays, but either he doesn't respect the Malphite's threat or he just mechanically misplays. Either way, from there it is a downward snowball, and this ends up being the most deaths in a game all split long for top laners in the LCS. This isn't totally an aberration either. He actually leads the league in isolated deaths, and was up there all split long basically. Top laners do dominate that stat, taking up the first 7 spots just due to the isolated nature of that position, but he's still the biggest offender in this category and has the most deaths for top laners this split as a whole, beating out the even notoriously coin flippy Huni, who's on the 9th place TSM. Kinda hard to believe that's our MVP, right? Well, not really, honestly. Let's take a look at the FlyQuest loss to highlight why. It's a different matchup this time, but again, Summit is trying his hardest to stomp the lane from level 1, just like he did in the Graves matchup. From minute 1, Summit looks for every advantage he can find. While this does expose you to chain feeding, it also opens up opportunities for your team. This dive doesn't work, but it pulls Decoy's TP to the top lane, absorbing both his and his enemy team's resources. This playstyle can also open up massive CS leads, and he's already up to about 30 CS 10 minutes into this game. This isn't a one-game situation about this either. Summit is absolutely crushing the entire league in CSD this split, even accounting for all those weird roaming top smite games. This is the highest CSD at 15 in the regular season ever for any position. He also leads the league in solo kills this split. Summit's playstyle is extremely feast or famine, but anyone who has followed his career in the LCK already knows this. He also had the most deaths in the LCK last year for top laners, while being top 2 in solo kills and being on a substantially worse team. Summit plays League of Legends to the hilt every single game, regardless of matchup, in the same vein as the Shy, Nuggery, Huni, and other infamously aggressive top laners. He's going to go 10-0 or 0-10 every single game, and given that he's playing in NA, you get the positive side 70% of the time. Most of us were waiting for the other shoe to drop at some point this split. It just kind of sucks that it was in the last 2 weeks. In this FlyQuest game, Summit's uber aggressive side laning allows the 1-3-1 to actually bolster Cloud9 in gold at 20 minutes this game, despite the failings of the rest of the map earlier in the game, leading them to fall behind initially. It's a microcosm for the entire C9 season. Fudge plays more as a facilitator than a point of pressure on the map.
This is an example of that, kind of taking the less desirable lane assignment, allowing Berserker to secure his farm in mid lane, and making sure that Berserker is going to be set up well for success later on.
Berserker is a late game bomb mostly focused on farming up, while Winsome tries to roam and make things happen on the map. Summit is the point of power in the early game that, in combination with Blabber, actually blows games open. Despite the minor collapse at the end of the season, Summit still led Cloud9 to 13 wins and 2nd place in the LCS. He did this while dominating his individual position and being the most important player on his own team. Sounds like an MVP to me. The other question in voting is, what does the candidate pool look like around him? There are some other good options, but almost every single person has had moments where they struggled this split. Someday had a chance, but also made critical mistakes down the stretch, like in his Illusion game. Santorin and Closer have been the model of consistency all split long, but it's hard to make a case that they outperform Blabber in their position, who has them beat across the board statistically. You could also copy and paste that consistency point to another player in TL and Bjergsen, who was a little bit more of a passenger early but started carrying games recently. Funnily, Team Liquid is such a well-balanced team that it's hard to pick an MVP candidate because the team proved they can win with all their substitutions, whereas I can't imagine how Cloud9 functions without Summit or Blabber, or 100 Thieves without Closer, for example. My point with all this isn't that Summit is the only MVP candidate that you can vote for, just that the recent flops don't really detract from his resume. He 100% deserves the criticism when he does flop though, like that 100 Thieves game, but I actually don't think the Malphite was the problem in the FlyQuest game. This week's comment of the week goes to Piffbugga. Someone asked for advice for the upcoming LCS finals this weekend in Texas, and Piffbugga gave the most important advice around. Please wear deodorant. Seriously, gamers, we are notoriously stinky at events. Just please stick up. Even for the LCS games in studio this weekend, use deodorant. I don't want to smell you. Casters don't want to smell you. Players don't want to smell you. That's gonna do it for this week of the Blame Game and the end of the regular season. It was an amazing split, but honestly, I cannot wait for playoffs to start, especially considering that fans are back in studio after being gone for over 2 years. I cannot wait, and I'll see you guys then.
You know, sometimes when it's your job to do something and you can't figure out how to do it because you filmed so many outros over the years, and now you're just awkwardly at the end of somebody's YouTube video and they're sitting there being like, is this really happening? Is he just saying he doesn't know what outro to do? Well, if you're like that, then you might want to consider getting an Alienware computer. Because if I had one in front of me right now, maybe I'd have like a script that I've written on it that would be something I could refer to instead of this weird ad-lib thing that I'm doing right now. No, honestly, Alienware's got great stuff. We've been using everything that they create for years. For TGI, I can actually officially say that now because it's just been like literal years. There's 2 years that just now where I wasn't even out here and we were using their stuff to do remote interviews, and it was awesome. They allow us to create wonderful 4K videos like this one, and I really appreciate their support. So if you appreciate my videos, understand that we couldn't do it without them. So go check them out. There's a link in the description below.